And viewers, let's start with a look at the top story. Now, President Donald Trump is saying that his administration is removing National Guard troops from Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland. The announcement was made in a Truth Social post on Wednesday. Trump said federal forces could return if crime rises in those cities. The deployments began earlier this year amid protests and were justified by the administration as necessary to fight crime and protect federal property. Local leaders and Democrats opposed the move, saying the deployments were unnecessary and an example of federal overreach. Meanwhile, courts repeatedly ruled against the administration, and judges said there was no evidence troops were needed to protect federal property. Yesterday, a federal appeals court ordered California National Guard troops returned to Governor Gavin Newsom's control. Last month, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked Trump's attempt to deploy Guard troops in Illinois, saying such authority applies only in exceptional cases. All right, and now joined in by Dr. Asta Chadha. She's an associate professor of international relations at Ritsumeikan University, and she joins us from Kyoto. Thank you very much, Dr. Chadha, for joining me, and I wish you a very happy new year on behalf of NewsX World. Now, this indeed looks like a welcome development from the United States. Why do you think Trump has ordered this now?
Well, very happy new year to the entire NewsX team, and thank you once again for inviting me here. I mean, there were talks going in the US, even in early December, because the troops had started moving out of some of these states and some of the cities already. And the reason was that they were fearing, or I mean, at least the administration was fearing that the kind of outcome that they received from the US Supreme Court, would not allow them to engage these troops and their deployment in the cities, mainly in the name of immigration crisis or violent crime, so on and so forth. And, that's exactly what happened. The courts ruled that, this was too disproportionate and this was not even required as part of the deployment. And lastly, I think the crux of that judgment from the Supreme Court is also the fact that they're expressing their disapproval of the manner in which the National Guard had been deployed under direct powers of the president, and the fact that this could have been engaged for longer term beyond December 2. So now, given that this is a setback, given that they do not find enough legal arguments in terms of deployment of National Guards for combating illegal immigration, given the fact that they do not find any evidence of the rise or now the proposed or the said fall in violent crimes, as President Trump has stated, all of this pretty much shows that this was far from wanting to maintain social order or wanting to decrease crime in the cities, and this was more about President Trump trying to consolidate his power in one way through these National Guards.
Dr. Chadha, would you say that this is now going to set a precedent for such orders to be taken place in other cities as well of the US?
I mean, that is what's expected, because this withdrawal is after a significant legal loss, after a significant legal setback for the Trump administration, right? And because he still seems to be claiming that the removal is because crime is lower in the cities, but he does not seem to be accepting the fact that these troops were never allowed onto the streets in some cities. And that is a fact. If you look at what happened in Chicago, in a lot of those places, the local leaders had disputed this deployment, and in a lot of places, the guards were not even, deployed in the cities. So, putting all of those ideas aside, I think President Trump only wants to focus on the fact that he's withdrawing the troops for his own reasons, and the fact that he maintains that power to withdraw them. He sees it as another way where he could make way for them to come back if he feels that the crime has risen. But if you look at it legally, there is no basis for this deployment, and this will definitely serve as you said, as a precedent for any other leader wanting to deploy the National Guards in cities on the basis of things that do not require their deployment, because the National Guard deployment requires emergency situations or something which is unprecedented and needs that sort of security. Things like crime and immigration do not require that kind of deployment. So this will definitely serve as a base sort of foundation of how the presidents or people in power can then mobilize troops.
Now, Dr. Chadha, this is also coming just as Trump had said that he would in fact strengthen National Guard crackdown on immigration ahead of the midterms. But he seems to have taken a U-turn on that stance. What do you think is triggering that change in mindset?
I mean, one is clearly the fact that the Supreme Court, which was, at least up until now, since President Trump's administration has been in power, has been seen as largely conservative. But, even they have ruled against the administration's use of the National Guard. So that is a major, major factor that he will have to roll back this idea of deployment of National Guards for domestic law enforcement, which is completely outside the purview of their function. That's one. And two, there seems to be also a dip in his popularity, a dip in his style of politics, and in the fact that people no longer see what was promised actually taking place on the ground. I mean, and nothing happens in a vacuum. It's not in silos. People are evaluating the Trump administration on the basis of what they promised in terms of economy, what they promised in terms of security. And insecurity is multidimensional. And what they have ultimately ended up achieving is through these multitudes and this confused network of tariffs. People are facing higher prices. There's increased cost of living. And given all of that, the pure rhetoric of, immigration related crimes, or the fact that they need to crack down on some sort of security, seems to be very, very weak. And given that, I feel that, President Trump or his administration also realizes that that just labeling Democrat-led states and calling them sanctuary cities and refusing cooperation is not going to work in their favor at all. So I suppose all of these together are becoming factors for the president to state that, even though he seems reluctant to accept the fact that they have pretty much lost that case, but he seems to accept the fact that, the ruling went against what he would have wanted it to go. And the fact that he's rolling it back, should be seen as him trying to, in some way, face reality and trying to recalibrate his whole rhetoric around economy or security, and then try and see if, whatever next steps he takes or whatever would be the next political strategy should not directly be in conflict with what the states and the other state machineries and other institutions are functioning.
Sure. Well, do stay on with me, Dr. Chadha, as we proceed.